Hi, Coach Larry here. Um, excuse me. Just to reiterate some background that I gave you last time, back on Monday, Motivation Monday. That was, I'm a life coach that specializes in business development as well as, excuse me, as well as health and spiritual counseling as well. And I usually do spiritual Sundays, which I'll be more than happy to talk more about that on on my Sunday podcast. Um, Hello, YouTube subscribers and future subscribers, Facebook fans, and of course LinkedIn and Twitter people. What's today? Today is Wednesday. They call it Wednesday Hump Day because it's the middle of the week. You're getting over the hump. And what I like and Wednesday is usually when I talk about health matters. And so in this case, I call it Healthy Hump Day. So happy, healthy hump day to everybody. You need to have a sense of humor. Um, what am I talking about today, and why should you listen to me as far in health areas? Well, like I say, one of the things I do is I coach in health. What Why should you listen to me as far as that goes? Well, my own experience and the experience that I have with my clients is that I've actually been able to create health breakthroughs with myself and my own health, as well as for my clients in helping them achieve their goals. How do I do that? Well, let's talk about what's going on in the world of health. We live, and this started way back as far as back as 1970, when Ansel Keys, after his quote unquote breakthrough study, um, promoted the idea that fat makes you fat and it promotes heart disease. The cholesterol myth, saying that if you eat too much cholesterol, you'll clog up your arteries and get a heart attack. And so they created the food pyramid for the standard American diet, and when which basically is the foundation of the pyramid is breads, pastas, potatoes, which is a starch, and any kind of grains, wheat, barley, uh, even quinoa, rice, whether it's white or brown. And all of these have one thing in common, and that's that they're all starches and they all boost your blood sugar to incredibly high levels. But it's the foundation of the standard Western diet, the standard American diet. Go further up, you got fruits and vegetables. They say you have to have like 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. Heavier on the fruits than the vegetables. Problem with that is that most fruits are very, very high in fructose as well as glucose. Fructose is a sugar. Anything with an ose at the end is a sugar. Lactose, coming from milk, is a sugar. And as I said, anything that ends in an ose is sugar. Ose is sugar, and sometimes you could say ose is gross. But when you have this kind of a diet with fructose, it goes to the liver, rather than through the kidneys and into the bloodstream that way. It goes to the liver and it's processed through the liver, and it can really cause damage there. With glucose, basic sugar. And like I say, sugar is sugar. It it goes up into the bloodstream, usually very quickly after being consumed, especially if it's a grain, or even, like I say, even a sweet fruit like an orange or pineapple or grapes or even bananas. And the blood sugar rises to extra high levels, and the pancreas takes produces insulin to drive that all that sugar into the cells, and that which is what insulin's supposed to do. Problem is that ever since 1970, when this kind of diet was promoted, type 2 diabetes had skyrocketed, obesity skyrocketed, because when insulin goes into the bloodstream to put the sugar into the cells get overloaded, and it creates more and more fat in the cells, more and more sugar, and it gets locked in, and that's how we become more and more obese. And a lot of people are fighting with weight problems because the hormone insulin promotes weight gain, because it doesn't allow for the glucose and the fat and glucose to be released, to be burned off as fuel, and that is very, very dangerous. And type 1 diabetes is a different story. Type 1, you're insulin dependent. You inject yourself with insulin to help put the blood sugar at bay, to do exactly what it's supposed to do. But if you increase your you increase your carb intake, you increase your need for insulin, and it causes a lot of the same problems. With type 2 diabetes, which starts off as being just insulin resistant, metabolic syndrome is another name for it, pre-diabetes, and then full blown diabetes. That's when the cells are overloaded with the sugar, and this is no more insulin. We can't handle what we've got. And modern medicine, unfortunately, if the blood sugar gets too high, they put in more insulin on top of the insulin that's already been produced, and it brings the blood sugar down to normal levels, but it forms fat around the major vital organs as well as in the gut, and it also damages the veins and arteries throughout the body. Now, with in this particular instance, what happens is that you're unable to burn off the sugar that you need to, and with the standard American diet, where the basis is heavy carbs, and then of course the fruits and vegetables, more fruit than vegetable, and then of course you got the protein, and then at the tip of the top, very, very moderate, very little in the way of fat. And that is a recipe for disaster. Why? Because fat is actually good for us. I mean, the studies that Ansel Keys did, if you call it a study, was out to prove that eating too much fat and eating too much cholesterol will actually put the cholesterol into the bloodstream and harden the arteries, and it'll cause heart attack. And then that's been disproven in recent studies, that higher, eating saturated fats doesn't cause heart disease. In fact, just the opposite. Before the 1970s, our diet, the standard diet, had a lot of meats, fatty meats, from whether it's ground beef, steak with the fat on it, poultry with the skin, um, fish, fish oil. Um, the cooking was done with either chicken fat, beef tallow, or butter, or or certain higher fat oils like avocado. Well, they didn't really do much with the avocado oil, but that's a very good oil. Coconut oil, saturated fats, and there was no such thing at the time as margarine. They used butter. You could also grease the pan with butter on toast, things like that. And the carbohydrates were not as heavy as they were from 1970 on with this food pyramid. As a result, obesity skyrocketed. Type 2 diabetes, which was practically unheard of back in the 60s and prior, is now at epidemic proportions, and 50, 60, 70% of the population is diabetic. I think it's even gone as far as 80%, and mostly type 2, which is insulin resistant, as I described earlier. The problem is, we think that we think we're doing the right thing by cutting our fat and eating more carbs, and that's what's causing the problem. Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. The way I see it, and in my experience with my own health issues, back up until around the time up until this past fall, my birthday was in October, and I was obese. I mean, my face was like swollen like crazy. I was 210 pounds at 5'4" and my waist size was I was a 42 waist, and my shirts were 2XL, double extra large, and that fit me, and that actually fit. That was the appropriate size for me at the time. But I was able to say, hey, I can't take this. I'm falling asleep too much due to my sleep apnea. My blood sugar, because I was type 2 diabetic, has been as high as 400. My blood pressure was like through the roof. I actually couldn't even work at the job that I had because of my blood pressure issues, and it was a mess. This was pre-COVID even. And so what happened was I was turned on to a couple of videos from different doctors. There's a nephrologist which is a kidney specialist in Canada, who has a YouTube channel. His name is Dr. Jason Fung. I would definitely recommend watching his videos. Talks about intermittent fasting and how that is so vital to a person's health. And he talks about, you can even go to extended fasting, but fasting is actually the healthiest thing you can do. I'm not saying don't ever eat at all, because we always need food, but not to the extent that we're doing now, which is causing more harm than good. I mean, there's 12-step programs where there's Overeaters Anonymous, and because people are so addicted to food. And the thing is, fasting, every religion, for example, advocates fasting. In Judaism, which I happen to be a Jew, and there's like 7 fast days throughout the year. only a couple of which are well known, like Yom Kippur, for example. But there's like 6, 7 others. I'm not going to get into that. Maybe that'll be for another video, like on Spiritual Sunday. I'll talk about that. Christianity, I believe, also promotes fasting at certain times of the year. The Muslim faith has the month of Ramadan, where you fast for the entire day and have a nice meal at night, and they manage to maintain decent health. I believe every other religion has some periods where they have fasts. And like I say, you don't want to go crazy with the fasting. Whenever we are sleeping, we're not eating. And when you don't eat, you fast. 8 hours a day, you're fasting. What Dr. Fung suggests, as well as other doctors, is that you narrow your eating window, which is what I've done. I stop eating at around 7, under normal circumstances. I go to bed at around 11, so that's 8, 9, 10, that's like 3 hours, 11. And then I don't start eating again until midday, usually around 12:30, 1 o'clock. The only thing I have in between, during my fasting time would be like a tea or water, certainly with a little salt. And salt is not bad for you, by the way. I'm going to get into that later. But by and large, I don't eat until midday, and then I have something really nice. Like, now, even if I was doing the standard American diet, it would still be helpful because you're narrowing the eating window. And so usually it's 16 hours worth of fasting, and then an 8-hour eating window. Sometimes I go for like 20 and 4. 23 and 1 might be a little bit much for me right now. And usually bring it down to like 2 meals rather than 3. They say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But that's not necessarily the case. And what is breakfast? You're breaking the fast. What difference does it make when you do it? And here's the thing. The average person is taught to have a high-carb breakfast, usually cereal, toast and butter, bagel with cream cheese. Cream cheese is not bad. It's not bad for you as long as there's not sugar in the cream cheese. The fat in it is perfectly fine. You got, but there's cereals, high-grain cereals, whether it be granola. A lot of times you have these other cereals like the Captain Crunches and the Fruit Loops and all this other stuff, which is high in sugar, plus of course the grains. Any grain is going to up your blood sugar. Period. Grains are not really good for you, and you don't really need that high a carb intake. A lot of lunches have rice. I used to love sushi. Problem is, they put a lot of rice in the sushi, and rice is carbs, it's starch, ups the blood sugar. The fish in it is good. The veggies are okay, like raw carrots, raw avocados, fine. But it's the rice in the sushi that is not really good for it. Then you have, but usually lunches are usually sandwiches, maybe pasta, something like that. For normal people, quote unquote. I don't eat breakfast anymore. But Then you have most people have a snack between breakfast and lunch. Usually a donut, which is of course high in sugar and starch, um, with with soda or something like that as a snack. Potato chips, pretzels, that kind of thing. Maybe some fruit, and the breakfast is usually you add in fruit juice. Also, very high sugar. In fact pasteurized orange or apple juice or even grapefruit juice is is sugar water because they pasteurize it and it depletes most of the nutritional value that's in the fruit that isn't really that much there to begin with. Then you have of course another snack from between lunch and dinner, usually similar to what the earlier snack was. And then of course you have the dinner itself, which could be pasta with some with maybe spaghetti and meatballs, or fish with potatoes. With you have a little bit of vegetable, maybe a salad, which fiber is not a is a good thing too. And then of course soda. Usually wash it down with soda or juice, sometimes milk. Occasionally, some people like to drink beer or wine with their meal, which is not a bad thing if you do it in moderation. But the problem is everything that I mentioned ups the blood sugar, and which is what causes metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, diabetes, and with diabetics, if it's not treated properly and controlled, you added a lot of medications. They inject you with insulin, but even with all of that, if you go with the standard American diet that I just described, which is a death trap, you have and become diabetic. It can lead to all kinds of complications: fat around the liver, fat around the kidneys and the pancreas, making them work extra hard, and upping the insulin levels. High insulin levels also hurt the liver because it doesn't create ketones to help burn the fat because it literally stores more fat as you eat. That's what insulin does, and insulin in, does actually do some good because it takes the glucose and puts it into the cells. Problem is that with all the excess carbs, the starches, the sugars, it goes right into you can't. It doesn't always fit into the cells, and you wind up putting it into other areas and other places in the belly and around the vital organs. That's why it goes around, hurting the liver. You get fatty liver. You get it goes into the kidneys. Puts the fat around the kidneys, which causes kidney failure, and people go into dialysis. People get neuropathy. It hurts the veins and arteries, and people get amputations as a result from this, whether it be toes or whether it be the feet or an entire leg. I had a guy from my synagogue that had his leg amputated as a result. He later developed heart problems and died. My brother's father-in-law was a type 2 diabetic. He was a big man. He was a smart man, very jovial guy, but he was a type 2 diabetic that didn't really take care of himself very well. He developed, he was extremely obese. He had, I'm sure he had fat around his liver. As I said, he was very, very big, very obese. He developed blindness as a result of his diabetes. He had kidney problems. He had kidney problems. I don't believe he had anything amputated, but just the fact that he had, that he couldn't drive anymore, and his wife had to be his eyes and ears and even his arms and legs to some extent. But he was a good man. He was a good man. He had a very, very good sense of humor. But unfortunately, he died a very tragic death, and it shouldn't have happened. Many times, and there's other complications that come with diabetes. I myself had struggled with it. As I said, I was obese. 210 pounds, 42 waist, double extra large shirts. Now I got a 34 waist, 8 pant sizes smaller, a large rather than a double extra large, and my blood sugar, which used to be up in the mid to high sevens, is now 5.4, which that's the A1C. It says how much blood sugar, what your blood sugar has been like on an average of 3 months, and it came down partially because of intermittent fasting, but also because I've changed my diet, which also helped me to improve my energy. One of the problems with high carb diets, aside from causing all these other problems, is you ever go to let's say a Chinese restaurant, and you stuff yourself on the Chinese buffet, and at the end you can't eat anymore, and an hour or two later you're hungry again. Well, that's because of the carbs. That's because of the rice and the noodles. Because it doesn't stimulate, because it stimulates the ghrelin, but it doesn't stimulate the satiety hormone, where it says, "Hey, I'm stuffed. You've eaten enough. Stop." That's the carbs. Now, the carbs prevent you from, your brain from saying, "Hey, you had enough." But with the diet that I've been doing, which is a very low carb diet, also called ketogenic, where you keep the carb count down under 50 grams of grams of carbs per day. If you get it under 20, it's even better. And substitute higher fat foods, saturated fats, like I say, the meat, heavy cheeses, creams, fish, eggs, things like that. Avocados, very, very important, very good. And a little bit of veg and of course, and bring the carbs down to very, very minimal levels. What happens is that when you're fasting, your body burns the glucose in the bloodstream, and the insulin level also drops, which is good, and then the liver, the blood sugar goes down. Then the liver creates something called ketones, which puts you into ketosis, not ketoacidosis, ketosis, which is nutritional ketosis, and the fat gets burned, and it creates something called autophagy. Autophagy is self-eating, and what happens is that the cells that are dead or very sick get eaten up and recycled into vibrant living cells that regenerate and creates a better look and much healthier, and your energy levels actually go up. I used to think that if you fast, if you stop eating for a longer period of time, you lose energy. My energy goes up when I fast, and I eat more fat rather than load up on carbs. And studies are showing that that's actually ideal. Um, and of course, I'm going to put in the show notes, links to certain sites that I use for my own health, as well as some studies, links to some of the doctors that I also follow. Dr. Ken Berry out of Tennessee, Dr. Jason Fung out of Canada, even Dr. Annette Bosworth, who's out of South Dakota, and has written a couple of really amazing books. Not to mention has a course in ketogenics, keto lifestyle. But you don't need to buy products with this kind of diet and lifestyle. You just need to eat whole foods, single ingredients, rather than the processed stuff that is being promoted. My diet, like I say, my A1Cs went down, and I got off of one blood pressure medicine, and my metformin, my diabetes medicine, they cut my prescription in half, and which is amazing in and of itself. If you want more information about that, subscribe to this channel, and of course hit the notification bell, so that anytime I come up with anything, either health on the health side, or on the business development side, or in the spiritual Sundays, you'll be the first to know about it and get. And of course, you could also subscribe to my Patreon link once I get that going, and you could throw a few bucks my way, and you can have some special videos designed for my patrons. Let's see what else. That's pretty much it. Again, if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe to this channel, and of course give me a thumbs up, and the more people I could share this with, the more people I get to help. By all means, that'll really help me out tremendously. And if you're interested in my private coaching, by all means, or even group coaching, just send put either comment below, or you can send me a private message through Facebook, LinkedIn, or even a message on Twitter. I usually check my social media. That's it. Stay healthy and unleash your powerful self. Have a wonderful rest of the night, and hopefully I'll be able to talk to you either tomorrow or certainly on Sunday when we go into Spiritual Sunday. Have a good night.